a substantial problem with conservatives, with the conservative base of the Republican Party. They just didn't trust him. They thought he was too moderate. Not dependable as a conservative voice. Trying to gauge, whoop, oh, hit the wrong button here. Whoop. Up. Okay, here we are. Trying to gauge the level of party loyalty. I took the average Gallup poll loyalty ratings in August. 79% of Democrats indicated at that point that they were going to vote for Obama. 85% of Republicans indicated they were going to vote for McCain. Both of those numbers are somewhat lower than we've seen in previous elections. It suggests that perhaps that this was a little bit more of a problem for Democrats than it was for Republicans, but in both cases, it suggested that the election would be close. Both parties had a problem. It was not as though one party had a very eager, unified base and the other was contentious. Fourth component is incumbency. Open seat elections are historically closer elections than elections with incumbents running. And 2008 is more open than usual in that we have no vice president. The Republican candidate was openly at odds with the administration over a number of policies. There was no love lost there. And I think that, again, makes this more likely to be a closely fought election. This is the history of this, going back to the Civil War, 1868, the end of the Civil War, to 2004. In open seat elections, there have been 13 open seat elections, that is, a presidential election without an incumbent running, since 1868. 6 of them were decided with the winner getting less than 51.5% of the vote. So almost half of these elections were nail-biting elections. In contrast, when an incumbent's running, it's very unusual to get an election that's that close. And you can see at the other end of the scale, landslides are almost unheard of when you have an open seat election, and it's fairly frequent when an incumbent's in the race. So again, on a historical grounds, you might suppose that 2008 would be another case where the election will be closely decided. Now, so you have 4 factors that suggest a close election. One factor clearly favors the Democrats in this election. That's retrospective evaluations. Voters' evaluations of the performance of the in-party counts in elections. Voters reward or punish the in-party candidate based on the past performance of the administration. And evaluations of the Bush administration are extremely low. So this is clearly an Obama advantage. If you look at, again, the history of this, from 1948 to 2004, you can see that there's a fairly strong relationship. This is the approval rating for the president in July of the election year, and then the vote for the incumbent, for the in-party candidate in November. And you can see it's a fairly strong relationship. In 2004, Bush had about 48% of approval, and just came up close to the trend line here. Well, we have this year, in July, we had the president with just over 30% approval rating, and that's only his father and Jimmy Carter had approval ratings that low, that late in the election cycle. And so that is bad news for the Republicans, good news for Senator Obama. That has to be held with a caveat, though, and that is there are 2 reasons to think that this is a problem for McCain, but it's not an insurmountable problem. That retrospective evaluations don't matter as much when the incumbent's not running. That is, if President Bush was the Republican candidate this year, it would have been a laugher 3 months ago. It would have been done. The fact that Bush is not the Republican candidate makes this a very different situation. Secondly, most of the drop in President Bush's ratings have occurred among Republicans and independents, mostly among Republicans. And these are not necessarily very likely voters for Obama. First is the difference in the effect of retrospective evaluations in an open seat race when the incumbent's not running versus when the incumbent is running. What we see here is once you control for party identification, the differences between the vote for the in-party candidate, between those who approve and disapprove, is lower in each case when it's an open seat. What that means, the bottom line interpretation of this is that approval ratings don't matter as much when the incumbent's not on the ticket. They matter. You can see that it still makes a difference. The in-party candidate, the successor candidate, if you will, always does better among those who are approving of his predecessor, but the difference is smaller. And so that's essentially that. What we're seeing here is that the retrospective evaluations are muted when it comes to an open seat election. And the second point that sort of mitigates the retrospective problem for McCain is that most of Bush's drop in approval from 2004 to today has been among Republicans. If you look here, this is overall approval rating in 2004 before the election, for the 2004 election, and then the latest Gallup approval rating. You see Bush dropped from 48% down to 27%. And 27% it's getting in the Jimmy Carter territory at this point. It's very low, 21-point drop. Now, where did that drop come from? It didn't come from Democrats. He was at 11% in 2004. When Bush won the White House, won the election in 2004, he was getting only 11% approval from Democrats. It's now down to 3%. Pretty much, I guess, Joe Lieberman, who else? Zell Miller, maybe some confused Floridians, but it's down. It's down within the margin of error. This could be zero. I mean, so it's an 8-point, but it's only an 8-point drop. It's not a huge drop. Where the drop is really sizable is among Republicans. He stood at 93% in 2004, and is now down to only 64%. Almost a 30-point drop among Republicans. Now, the drop has also been among independents, but independents are a much smaller group. So the big loss here is among Republicans. And the importance of this is that these people are people who aren't very happy. This 29% who are now disapproving of Bush, who didn't disapprove of him 4 years ago, are angry at Bush, but that doesn't mean that they're fertile territory for Obama to pick up. They are, in fact, Republicans, and that may still guide their choice. Final factor that suggests this might be a close election is the candidates' records on values issues. Moving beyond the speeches and the records in the Senate, we can actually evaluate how the candidates have performed in the past. This is an unusual election because we have two senators running, two senators that served in the Senate at the same time. And if we look at their records on moderation versus ideology and on bipartisanship, it suggests that McCain may have an advantage on that. There are a number of groups that